Gul Dukat thanks Captain Sisko for taking care of his daughter Zial. Captain Sisko wakes up to Nurse Dukat taking care of him in a cave. And Dukat hates the Bajorn broken, wrinkled noses. But has he seen his own nose lately? Come on. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk on a rainy day in Los Angeles, and today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine's Season 6, Episode 11, Waltz, written by Ronald D. Moore. We were talking about right before we hit record, and directed beautifully by Renee Auberjonois. This was January 8th, 1998. How you doing, Cirroc?
I'm doing great. Almost a year to the day, right? While we're doing this review,
Yeah.
But I'm glad you said beautifully when you kind of did the intro on the director Renee Auberjonois, who I thought had some very good shots in this episode that emphasized the emotions. A lot of close-ups with the villain in the background, kind of in a blur.
Man,
close-ups on Sisko's.
yeah.
A lot of those. Just love the way he played with the camera in this. Even the shots where you would see Dukat talking to himself or talking alone, but I like the lighting and the mood and setting of those shots. The wider shots that had Dukat kind of standing there off to one side of the frame. And you have to be clever because there were moments where you have to kind of always play the, Sisko doesn't know what's going on. He does know what's going on. It's like visions in somebody's head. So I did like this episode a lot.
Yeah, and can I just point out very quickly to everybody at home, Cirroc Lofton is wearing a green shirt that says in big, bold letters, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
This is one of my favorite shirts. Thank you, Ryan.
That is my favorite shirt of yours for obvious reasons. That was we got you that for your birthday, and we gave it to you in Vegas.
Yeah,
and I'm just glad that it looks so cool on you, man. Because
I love this shirt. It's the you can't find a Jake shirt everywhere, so I'm happy to have one.
Yeah, and you said that one time you were wearing it and some guy was like, "Hey, Jake," and you're like, "Oh, this guy recognizes people these days," and then you realize you're wearing the shirt. Okay.
Then I look down and say, "Oh, okay, that's what it is."
How'd you guess? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, looks great on you. I do love green on you. I think that's definitely one of your favorites.
It's my favorite color. Favorite color. Yep.
Okay. Anyway, so this episode, man, there were a lot of things to notice in this episode, right? Like it was certainly one of those episodes that didn't have a ton of stuff going on. It was just a little bottle episode that had obvious implications for future episodes. So it wasn't fully, it wasn't quite serialized, but it was, it was a bottle episode that had implications. But there was a very tiny, B plot. So what this was an episode that kind of forces you to really pay attention to the details and the nuances, and like you're mentioning, the shots and the lighting and the performances and the undertones. And my first feeling was that this was almost like a sequel to Duet. If you remember the first season's Duet with Major Kira and Gul, whatever the heck his name was. And right now the Star Trek fans are saying his name vehemently at me. But it was very reminiscent of that, of kind of like the push and pull of a Cardassian wrestling with his own conscience, but kind of wrestling with his own conscience with the other person. Obviously, Duet had Major Kira wrestling with her conscience as well, and it was really powerful. And this one was mostly Dukat, and Sisko Sisko wasn't wrestling with anything. He knew exactly his position on the situation. He's like, I just got to tell this guy whatever he needs to hear so I can get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, this, like, right away from the beginning, as soon as this show opened with Captain's Log, and Sisko starts going into how he feels about Dukat, and he says something to the extent of, a part of me wishes he were dead. You know. Then he says, but then his daughter died. Isn't that enough punishment for one lifetime? It was Sisko wrestling with his own, like,
you're right, yeah,
his own feelings about Dukat. He's like, well, I feel bad for the guy. He's, his daughter died. He lost everything. He's went crazy. But at the same time, I kind of hate this guy and I wish he were dead. So it's like, it's a great like balance there. And I enjoyed the back and forth of the opening scene that they had. I thought that opening scene set the tone for the episode and let me know, okay, we're going to get into a real chess match between two of my favorite characters on the show, two of the, some of the finest actors.
Yes.
So I said, we're going to get into it. This is going to be a mano-a-mano, who can one up the other. And
it's a T-bone steak, right?
Yeah. So already I sat down and I was hungry, and I don't think my attention ever left the screen because I was focused in on, what I knew was going to be great performances between these two. And I love the way there is a push and pull between the performance. You have, when Dukat is pulling, Sisko eases up a little bit.
Totally.
And then when Sisko starts going hard, Dukat softens up. And and there's this back and forth, where they're just going back and forth playing this game of, of chess. So this mental game of chess of who's, probing, pulling back, probing, feeling out which way somebody's thought process is. And as I was watching it, just from the beginning, I was thinking, am I watching what I'm watching, or is this something else? And I don't know if you got that feeling while you were watching it, but as I was watching it, I was saying, okay, is this a dream? Like, is this a dream that's only occurring in Dukat's head? That was one thought that...
Interesting, yeah.
That kind of crossed my mind as I was watching this. And I wasn't sure if the whole Dukat and Sisko, leaving and fleeing the station was actually a true story. So I was like watching this tentatively, trying to figure out where I was in the landscape of this story.
And along with that push and pull, the very first point you made just now, just made me realize that I kind of misspoke and misinterpreted a little bit in my previous point when I said that Sisko knew exactly what his position was. And I come to realize that was more on the surface. And as usual, Deep Space Nine was much more layered and much more nuanced than that. What this was more was, it was another emotional arc episode. Almost all these episodes are an emotional arc, for a character or two, in this case, two. And Sisko's was more subtle. We watched Dukat's struggle. We can all see very clearly, Stevie Wonder could, in fact, that he had this major struggle, but we couldn't see Sisko's as much. But upon revisiting it, when you mentioned the beginning of the episode, you're right. He was unsure how he felt about Gul Dukat. He actually wondered, has he suffered enough? And upon observing him throughout this entire episode, he realizes at the end, he has that little monologue to Kira, I believe it was, where he says, this guy is pure evil. Like, he made up his mind. Dukat was on trial with Sisko figuratively and also physically that we watched. But in Sisko's mind, he also wasn't 100% sure how he felt about Dukat. But by the end of the episode, he was 100% sure, and he had made up his mind. I think the last thing he said was, let me see, he says, I fear no evil. And from now on, it's him or me. And he said, life is so complicated. Nothing is truly good or truly evil. It's all shades of gray, which, by the way, was a nice nod to the worst episode in the history of The Next Generation. Next Generation, Shades of Gray, my least favorite episode ever. Anyway, And then he says, then you spend time with a man like Gul Dukat, and he knows what evil truly is. So yeah, he too had an emotional journey to where he was unsure and he kind of wrestled with how he felt about Dukat. And now he's like, no, this guy's beyond repair.
Yeah, it's like, when you have a wild animal that you bring in and you're like, hey, this animal's cool with me, he like,
and then you learn.
and yeah, like he's cool. And then there's just that one day where it's just like tries to go for your neck and you're like, reminder, this is a deadly animal here. This is, instinctually, it has certain things that could be triggered. And even though it's friendly and it lets you pet it for a while and, it seems harmless, it can be very harmful. And I think that's what we got a sense of with Sisko in the beginning of this, wrestling with the thought of, he was actually putting himself in Dukat's shoes. He was like, okay, if I was him and I lost my power and my daughter and this, and if I went through all of this stuff, I would be a mentally broken person too. Yeah. And so he had some empathy for him being in that mental space of, being dilapidated. And you can sense that Sisko is like trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think there was that exchange between the two of them. So Dukat, and I love, I always think about this point when I watch Marco Limo perform.
Yeah.
He does deliver lines in a way where it's so unique to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. He stretches certain words out. He uses a certain tone. And, in the beginning of this one, he says, so I'm a war criminal, one of those to Sisko. Mm-hmm. And Sisko says to him something to the effect, well, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And that's basically, that's what the show is. Innocent until proven guilty. That could have been the title for the episode as well, right?
Right. Yeah. And Dukat kind of proved himself guilty in Sisko's mind. Yeah.
Right. And, that's what we saw unfold. And I like the way that you brought the analogy of it was really, that was the trial. We were watching the trial of Dukat. We were watching his defense. He was making his defense. He had his witnesses, Damar, he had Wayoon, he had, those were his witnesses that he was calling to the stand to say, isn't this the truth? Isn't this what happened? And even more, I mean, the way Ronald Moore paced this episode is also fantastic.
Totally.
Because the pace is perfect. It just comes here, there. Even when the B plot slides in, it gives you a little bit more for the A plot, right? So just like, that's what made me kind of realize, okay, the A plot is real because the B plot started to confirm it, right?
Right. And there was also that moment where they give us the old okie doke where we think, oh, they're being saved. And you're like, that's weird that they're being saved with 17 minutes left in the episode. I'm not sure how this, and then you see, oh, it's
two other people.
Right. And that was great because that gave us a little herky jerky moment that kind of pulls us out of this thing. And then we get right back on track. It was a nice little, fake, but it wasn't enough to take us out of the story. It was just enough to, again, raise the stakes in an interesting way, in a way that makes us think, oh shit, maybe they aren't going to get saved. Maybe that was their chance. And now Sisko's on his own with this maniac.
Yeah, and I like the uncertainty of it. Like I said in the beginning, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, well, and the way Ronald Moore wrote it, he said, yeah, there was this thing, and the ship got hit, and then Lieutenant somebody came through, and then he got hit in the head. He got hit in the head when O'Connell got hit with a plasma something, and so the story was like, and you could see Sisko could confirm certain amounts of the story up until a part where he couldn't remember anymore. And that's where Dukat was like, well, that's when I took you into the shuttle. And then, and I didn't pay attention to what everybody else was doing. So part of me was thinking, is that a true story? Because you can't really trust Dukat, right? Did he really escape from jail? Did he hit Sisko over the head and escape from jail and drag him with him? Were they really attacked? So these kinds of things were going through my head as I was watching it. I'm trying to challenge the veracity of the escape story, where that wasn't even really the main bulk of the story, right? That was just one part of it, one tentacle of it that I was trying to wrap my head around. And while I'm wrapping my head around that, you can see Sisko is also trying to figure it out as I am. Sisko is like slowly he's like, okay, who made this cast for me? Which I really like that metal cast they put on Sisko. But he does the thing where he's like, who made this cast? He's trying to figure it out. Okay, so my arm was broken. You fixed it. You helped me out. So you must have good intentions because you could have left me for dead.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's trying
Lieutenant,
to,
by the way, his name's Lieutenant McCollum, not O'Connell.
Okay.
But so I misspoke there. But he's also thinking like, did a piece of shrapnel really hit McCollum suddenly out of nowhere? Or did you say, thanks for the help dragging Sisko into the shuttlecraft? See ya in true Cardassian form, which seems a lot more likely, right?
Right. And that's why I can't trust Dukat's story. But there's certain amounts of it that you have to trust because he did repair Sisko's arm. He's caring for him. He made a bed for him. He's cooking for him.
Save him. Like we know that Sisko would be dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So there has to be some level of truth to what he's saying. So just like Sisko trying to figure out where he stands, I felt like I was trying to figure out what's going on too. And I love that we were figuring it out together. Mm-hmm. And then at some point I realized, okay, so this is not a dream sequence. It's not all happening in Dukat's head. He's not just locked in a cell and this is all playing out in his mind. This is actually the part that's playing out in his mind is the part that they're showing us that's playing out in his mind, which is the Kira and the Wayud, right? So once I accepted that fact, which took me a while to just get settled into that, right? Like, okay, I think I know what's happening here. They really did have to escape. The Defiant really is looking for them, so I started to, settle into the story, and still like two actors that are fantastic going into the bulk of, I think the climax, when they started to kick it up a notch and really, turn the volume up is when Dukat says to Sisko, enough with all the lies and stuff. Let's, tell me the truth. And Sisko's like, you want me to tell you the truth? And it's like one of those a few good men moments. Yeah, but
Sisko's really saying, okay, well, you start telling the freaking truth, dude.
Right.
Like, we need to know what's going on with Dukat here.
Yeah, but he does. He's like, you were the commander. You were in charge during the occupation. Right. And you were responsible for carrying out the orders. Right. Mm-hmm. And you killed all those people. Nah.
I saved them. I lowered the death rate by 20%. So this is, and now we're really getting into the crux of it all, which is that this episode isn't as much about did Dukat save Sisko and how and exactly where, what the steps were there. The question that's answered midway through is why did he save him? And of course, Dukat's trying to act like he saved him because he was just saving a life. But we come to find out that he was saving him because he wants that understanding or that forgiveness or that respect from Sisko. He can't just let Sisko die. I mean, especially because right now he's out of his mind. He can't just let Sisko die knowing that Sisko thought he was a monster. He saves him and he wants to convince him and say, look, this wasn't my fault. Look how nice I am. Look how great. Tell your friends. once we, I'm going to pretend like we're trying to be saved, but I'm not really going to let us be saved, so that we can really hash it out like, oh, we're old friends and we're brothers. And then and he just thinks that they're just going to come together and everything's going to be great. And then he'll finally be understood. That's his goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that is his goal, when he needs somebody to co-sign or vouch for what he did and basically put a validation. He wants Sisko's validation. Sisko, was I right? Did I, did I do the right thing? Faced with my circumstances, this is the hand I was dealt. So, I was answering to Central Command. You know that, right? Central Command calls the shots. I have to carry out orders. And despite all of that, I still did my best to treat the Bajorans with humanity and respect. And I, outlawed child labor, and I did this. And so he wants Sisko to say, yes, you were a great man. You tried your best. You, despite the fact that you were given all of those obstacles, you overcame them and still showed who you were. But unfortunately, he ends up showing who he is in this moment, which makes it just like, that's where the stakes keep rising.
So we got to take our break real quick, but there's a lot more to talk about on this one. Obviously, this one is very deep and very good, and we'll be right back on the 7th Rule.